The reading is from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 10, verses 1 to 7. Then Jesus summoned his 12 disciples and gave them authority over unclean spirits to cast them out and to cure every disease and every sickness. These are the names of the 12 apostles. First Simon, also known as Peter, and his brother Andrew, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew the tax collector, James, son of Alphaeus, and Thaddeus, Simon the Canaanian, and Judas Iscariot, the one who betrayed him. These 12 Jesus sent out with the following instructions. Go nowhere among the Gentiles and enter no town of the Samaritans, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. As you go, proclaim the good news. The kingdom of heaven has come near. I recently watched on YouTube a video that illustrated the latest scientific theories about how and when the universe will end. The universe has existed so far for a mere 13.5 billion years. It's expected to go on for trillions and trillions of years, even after all the stars have stopped shining and the last black hole has melted away. The video showed that the period when any sort of life is possible is infinitesimally small compared with the huge timescale for the universe's existence. Having said that, we're still talking about life being around for a billion years. We believe, as the Creed says, in God, the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, and of all things visible and invisible, and in one Lord Jesus Christ, the only begotten Son of God. God existed before our universe was created, and he will go on existing long after it has gone. God chose to live a human life at a specific point in the history of the universe and at a particular place in Jesus, a Jewish man. The Old Testament tells the story of the troubled relationship between God and human beings, and specifically with the descendants of Jacob, who was given the name Israel after wrestling all night with an angel. Before returning to heaven, Jesus told his disciples to go and make disciples of all nations. And because they did, we, and people from all around the world, are Christians today. We take it for granted now that the Christian gospel is for everyone. So it may seem odd to hear Jesus at an earlier stage sending his disciples to proclaim the good news and telling them not to go anywhere among those who are not Jewish, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. As you go, proclaim the good news. The kingdom of heaven has come near. Jesus said something very similar when he was approached by a foreign woman who asked him to help her daughter. He answered, I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, and so he wouldn't help her. Though in that case he soon relented and gave the woman what she wanted. Jews think of themselves as part of a chosen people. Many believe that God chose them for a purpose, to be an example for the rest of the world of how to live in covenant with God, as described in the Torah, the law of the Old Testament. So we shouldn't be surprised that Jesus saw his primary mission as the renewal of the relationship between God and the Jews. He wanted to bring his own people back to the Father who loved him and loved them. Jesus attracted crowds of people to come and listen to him, and his closest followers were his fellow Jews. But as the message was spread around the world by the apostles, many more non-Jews became Christians. There's no suggestion in the New Testament that Jesus wanted to start a new religion. The split came later. It was the trauma caused by the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem when Roman soldiers set it on fire that those who believed in Jesus Christ were no longer accepted as Jews. And Judaism and Christianity became two separate paths for those who believed in God. We can't hide the fact that Jews have suffered badly from Christians for much of the last 2,000 years. We naturally recoil in horror from the Holocaust perpetrated by the Nazis. But Jews have been discriminated against and persecuted violently at many times and in many places down the centuries. The pretext was often that Jews continued to reject Jesus and so shared responsibility with their ancestors for Jesus' death. It's not hard to see how the Church's attitude to Jews prepared the ground for modern anti-Semitism. The founding of the modern state of Israel in 1947 has served to make things even more complicated. Of course, it is a good thing that there is one country in the world which is a safe homeland for Jews. It is understandable that Jews want the Holy Land to be that place, because it is where Abraham was promised he and his descendants would live forever. It's tragic that to create a country for Jews, it was necessary to eject Palestinians from the homes they and their families had occupied for centuries. It meant that conflict between Israelis and Palestinians was inevitable from the start and continues to the present day. Both sides have done terrible things to each other, so much so that it becomes harder and harder to imagine what a just solution would look like. Disentangling criticism of Israel's actions from anti-Semitism isn't easy either. The brutality and ruthlessness of Israeli response to any perceived threat stems from a determination that never again would Jews suffer what they endured for so long. Yet I'm sure that God is just as concerned as he always has been for the lost sheep of Israel. We Christians have much to reflect on when we think how our ancestors mistreated those lost sheep of Israel. And we must consider what we need to say and to do differently today. Amen.